What's up, guys? I kind of want to make a video to show how to use a tape measure. Many of you probably will come across this video and be like, what? How do you not know how to use a tape measure? Well, believe it or not, there's a lot of you guys out there, a lot of people on the world that never use a tape measure. They didn't grow up with a blue collar family, they didn't grow up with shop class, they didn't grow up in the country, they didn't grow up with a shop at their house. So they have never been taught or even shown what a tape measure is and what, the lines between an inch, what they really mean. So I just want to break it down, what those lines mean, how to read a tape measure, so you can get a better understanding and maybe how to possibly read and how to use one. So you can apply it in your life as it may be. Hopefully you can learn something from this. For those of you, this is just a basic tape measure. This is a retractable one. You let go, it goes. This is a 25 footer. It's also magnetic, which means at the end of the tip, it's magnetic. So you can take something and it's magnetic. This is good for, if you're working something with steel, something whatever, you can put it against the deal and pull it out and measure. But they have non-magnetic ones too. It doesn't really matter. This is just to kind of show you what a tape measure is and how to read it. This is another one. This isn't as common in the construction world, but being a lineman, this is what we use primarily out on a daily basis for measuring holes. On a pole, we're framing a pole. This one, it's got the same exact readings as a regular tape measure. It's just so this is a foldable one that goes out to 72 inches. It's also fiberglass because we work around energized lines. We don't want a metal one we can stick up in the air if we got to measure from, some hot phases up in the air down the pole to get a measurement to drill a hole. You can't use a steel one for that because steel is obviously conductive. This is fiberglass, so it's not as conductive as it shouldn't be. So this is a common one we use, but it's literally the same exact idea of what a tape measure is. And kind of break it down actually in fractions to really show and help you understand how it works. So here, as you can see, I have 4 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want to break down the quarters and the eighths for you guys. So as you can see here, we have this 1 inch mark. And on the tape measure, you can see that there's going to be 4 bigger marks on these small lines. So you're going to have a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, 3/4, and then full inch. So what this means, this first smaller big line is going to be 1/4 inch. Then you're going to have a 1/2 inch, and then you're going to have 3/4 of an inch. And if you break this down, it's very simple. In 1 inch, you're going to have a 1/4, a 1/2, a 3/4, and a full inch. So meaning 1/4 plus 2/4, which is a 1/2 inch, right? 2 divided by 4 is 1/2, plus 3/4 is going to equal 1 full. So it's very easy if you break it down in an aspect like that, to where these lines represent these lines here, these lines right here, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, full 1 inch. So those are 4 basic measurement lines that need to be known in construction, and for the most part, rough construction. You really only need to know your quarters and probably maybe your eighths, which we'll go over your eighths here in a second. So if you can just break that down and realize, you look at a tape measure, it's the same on this kind of tape measure too. Right here, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, full inch. So it's a very basic understanding to learn the 1/4 inches inside a tape measure. And then now we'll go over what the other little lines mean, the eighths and the 16ths. All right, so now we'll go over eighths. So inside an inch, there's going to be 8 eighths, obviously, in an inch. You have 1/8, 2 eighths, which is a 1/4 inch. 2 divided by 8 is what? 1/4. 3 eighths, 4 eighths, which is what? 4 divided by 8 is what? 1/2. 5 eighths, which isn't divisible. 6 eighths, which 6 divided by 8 is what? 3/4. Then you'll have 7 eighths. Then you'll have your full inch, 8 out of 8, which is 1. So if you break that down, like I said, I have a little rough drawing pictured out here. But you'll have 1/8, you'll have 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and then 1 inch. So 1/8 isn't divisible, right? So you just have 1/8. It's just, this is just 1/8, right? I'll draw it down here. So 1/8 equals 1/8. 2/8 is divisible. What's 2 divided by 8 is what? Well, that's 1/4. So 2/8 is actually a quarter. You have 3/8, which isn't divisible. So that's just 3/8. You have 4/8. Well, what's 4 divided by 8? 4 goes into 8 how many times? 2 times. So 4 divided by 8 is 1/2. The 5/8 is not divisible, so you just have 5/8. 6/8 is divisible. What's 6 divided by 8? 6 goes into 8 how many times? Well, 3/4 times. 6 divided by 8 is 3/4. And then 7/8 is not divisible, so that's just 7/8. And then the next mark up is just going to be 1 inch. So if you're able to break it down and just see on a tape measure that 1/8 equals 1/8, 2/8 equals 1/4 inch, which you could see on here. So you'll have on your tape measure, you'll have 1/8, 2/8, which is quarter, 3/8, 4/8, which is 1/2 inch, 5/8, which is 5/8, 6/8, which is 3/4, then 7/8, which is 7/8, and then your full inch. So if you can read it, the second smallest line on this tape measure are 8/8, 1/8, 2/8, quarter, 3/8, 4/8, 1/2 inch, 5/8, 6/8, with 3/4, and then 7/8, which is 7/8, and then full inch. So those are very easy. So then we'll go over what the smallest line on there is, which is our 16ths. So now let's break down your 16ths. So 16ths aren't as practical usually in especially rough construction. If you're doing trimming, things like that, and need to be more specific, then you probably will use your 16ths. But for the most part, in general construction, I don't use the 16ths too much, especially in my line of work, but you need to know what the 16ths are. You'll have the smallest mark. You'll have 1/16, 2/16, which is an eighth, right? 3/16, 4/16, which is divisible, which is your quarter. 5/16, 7/16, 8/16, which is what? 1/2 inch. 8 divided by 16 is half. 9/16, 10/16, which is divisible because it's even number and even number. 11/16, 12/16, which is divisible, which is 3/4. 13/16, 14/16, which is divisible, it's even numbers, which is 7/8, and then 15/16, and then your full inch. So once again, you could break down the math. 1/16 goes into 1/16 no many times. 2/16 is 1/8. 3/16 is nothing. 4/16 is, well, do the math. 4 goes into 16 how many times? 4 times, so that's 1/4 inch. 5/16, and then so on and so forth. You get 8/16 is also 4/8, which is also 1/2 inch. And if you just move your way down the inch, down these little marks, you can kind of tell that this is what these marks mean. You can count it. There's 16 of these in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. If someone were to call out and be like, hey, I need a piece of wood at 4 3/16, well, you measure it out from the end of the wood. Let's use this mark right here. And you come out, well, let's see. 4, 1, 2, 3. You count it out, mark it, and cut it. It's very simple. It doesn't come to the back of your hand like instantly unless you've been working with a tape measure for a long time. I still count out. If someone needs something at thinking 1/4, I know where 1/4's at. I know where 1/2 inch. I know where 3/4 is at. But if someone says they need something at an 7/8, I'm like, well, sure, that's your mark right here. Beginning out, you can count it. It takes a second to count out. If they need something at 4 5/16, you just count out your marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5/16. Pretty simple. It's not too difficult. You just, as long as you can read a tape measure and see that these marks, what they mean, 16ths, 8ths, and quarters, then you pretty well have the measurements dialed in as far as using a tape measure. So we have this piece of wood, right? Start at this end of it, and I'll measure. So as you can tell, it's stuck on the edge, right? And then we'll measure out to the end of this board. And what does it come to? Before I tell you, what does it come to? 26.5, as you can see. What kind of measurement do we have here? Count it out. From the looks of it, it looks like what? 4 and possibly 3/16, or 4 and an 1/8. Either way, it's not a very exact object to measure, but as long as you can count it out and see what the rough estimate of that measurement is, then you can kind of get the handle of reading a tape measure. I've broken down what the measurements of a tape measure and kind of what they are and how the fractions and math kind of works between it. It's not too difficult, it's very simple. You can go get yourself a tape measure of any sorts. I mean, you have a ruler, I'm sure, and just practice. Just figure out what your 16ths are, what your 8ths are, and your quarter inches, and it's fairly simple from there on out. I mean, you can get a real tape measure from any hardware store, really anywhere. They're 10, 15 bucks. Your dad might even have one laying around in the garage somewhere. He never uses it, but you might have one. If you can get it figured out, you know, practice measuring things. It's not too difficult. If you're looking to get into the construction world and trades, the very basic thing that I feel like you need to know how to do is read a tape measure from inch 1 all out to 1,000 inches or 42 feet, whatever the case may be able to read a tape measure. It's a very skill that you really need to accomplish and need to know. And it's not hard, but just practice, learn it. Once you get it figured out, then you'll be set to go as far as measuring things. Hopefully you enjoyed and practice reading your tape measure and learn it.
Wait a minute.